Dead Stars by Paz Marquez Benitez. This story is about a man named Alfredo Salazar, his fiancée Esperanza, and the woman who is the opposite of Esperanza, Julia Salas, and the consequences of infidelity. 8 years into the future, Alfredo sits in his chair and reminisces. Through the open window, the air steeped outdoors passed into his room, quietly enveloping him, stealing into his very thought, Esperanza, Julia, the sorry mess he had made of life, the years to come even now beginning to weigh down, to crush. They lost concreteness, diffused into formless melancholy. 8 years earlier, at the house of Don Julian, Carmen asked him about Alfredo and Esperanza's relationship.
Papa, kailan po papakasalan ni Kuya Alfredo si Ate Esmeralda?
Hindi ko alam, Iha. Pero sa pagkakaalam ko, gusto ni Esperanza sa susunod na buwan.
Carmen spoke of how Alfredo should hurry in marrying Esperanza, as she must be tired of waiting. Though Don Julian tells her that Esperanza isn't in much of a rush either.
Papa, naalala mo pa ba kung gaano mapag-ibig si Alfredo?
Mapaibig siya? Kanino?
Si Esmeralda, siya lang ng babaeng kinorte niya. Sa pagkakaalam ko, napapansin ko lagi siyang binibigyan ng bouquet, harana at love letter.
Hindi ko maalala yung huling beses na ginawa niya yung mga iyon para kay Esperanza.
Alfredo remembered that period with a wonder not unmixed with shame. That was less than 4 years ago. Sitting quietly in his room now, he could almost revive the restlessness of those days, the feeling of tumultuous haste, such as he knew so well in his boyhood when something beautiful was going on somewhere, and he was trying to get there in time to see. Hurry, hurry, or you will miss it, someone had seemed to urge in his ears. So he had, avidly seized on the shadow of love, and deluded himself for a long while in the way of humanity from time immemorial. In the meantime, he became very much engaged to Esperanza.
Ano sa tingin mo ang nangyari sa kanila?
Ganyan talaga kapag matagal na magkasama. Mainit ngayon, sa sumunod na araw, malamig.
6 weeks ago, that house meant nothing to him, save that it was the Martinez house, rented and occupied by Judge de Valle and his family. 6 weeks ago, Julia Salas meant nothing to him. He did not even know her name. But now, one evening, he had gone neighboring with Don Julian, a rare enough occurrence since he made it to a point to avoid all appearance of currying favor with the judge. This particular evening, however, he had allowed himself to be persuaded. A young woman had met them at the door. In the characteristic Filipino way, formal introductions had been omitted, the judge limiting himself to a casual, ya se conocen, with the consequence that Alfredo called her Miss de Valle throughout the evening. He was confused as to why the woman smiled every time he called her by the judge's name. Later, Don Julian informed him that the woman was actually Del Valle's sister-in-law and that her name was Julia Salas.
Ay, patawad po, Binibini Salas.
Okay lang. Naalala ko lang na nagawa ko rin naman iyan.
The two laughed at the situation they found themselves in. Don Julian and his uncommunicative friend the judge were absorbed in a game of chess. The young man had tired of playing appreciative spectator and desultory conversationalist. So, he and Julia Salas had gone off to chat in the vine-covered porch. These visits became a normal occurrence for the two. He enjoyed talking with her, and it was evident that she liked his company. Yet, what feeling there was between them was so undisturbed that it seemed a matter of course. Only when Esperanza chanced to ask him indirectly about those visits did some uneasiness creep into his thoughts of the girl next door.
Umuwi ka ba pagkatapos ng misa?
Alfredo suddenly realized that for several Sundays now, he had not waited for Esperanza to come out of the church, as he had been wont to do. He had been eager to go neighboring.
Nagtatrabaho at sinasamahan ko minsan si Papa kay Senyor Del Valle.
That half-lie told him what he had not admitted openly to himself, that he was giving Julia Salas something which he was not free to give. He realized that, yet something that would not be denied beckoned imperiously, and he followed on.
Dito sa taas, may nahanap ako.
Kasiyahan?
Kabataan, enerhiya,
Ganun ka na ba talaga katanda?
at ang ginugusto ng puso. Diyan sa baba, masyadong malawak ang daan at pinaglakaran. Kulang sa misteryo. At dito,
Misteryong panandalian?
di tulad ng mga ibang misteryo. Hindi tulad ng sayo.
Ilang linggo mo pa lang ako nakikilala, Alfredo.
Kung pag-aaralan kita hanggat sa katapusan ng oras, hindi ko pa rin malalaman at pagkaingkantadya mo.
Ganun katagal? Gusto mo bang malaman?
Imbitasyon ba yan?
The two laughed and blushed at each other. Those 6 weeks were now so swift-seeming in the memory, yet had they been so deep in the living, so charged with compelling power and sweetness, because neither the past nor the future had relevance or meaning. He lived only the present day by day, lived it intensely with such a willful shutting out of fact as outstanded him in his calmer moments. Just before Holy Week, Don Julian invited the judge and his family to spend Sunday afternoon at Tanda, where he had a coconut plantation and a house on the beach. Soon enough, Alfredo followed Julia to the beach.
Nagugustuhan mo ba ang tanda?
Naaalala ko ang aking nayon, pero wala kaming gantong dalampasigan tulad nito. Parang napaka-iksi ng araw ngayon, hindi ba? Sa tingin ko, ito na ang huling beses tayo na magkikita.
Huling beses? Bakit?
Siguro dahil ikaw ay masyadong abala sa trabaho mo.
Mukha ba ako matrabaho?
Kung ikaw ay matrabaho, siguro hindi lang halata. Hindi na pinagpapawisan o kinukulang sa hilinga. Kalma lang.
Sana lang. Sinasabi na masaya isang lalaki kapag siya ay kalma.
Katulad ng karabaw na nagpapahinga sa putikan.
Gusto ko sana makita yung nayan. Saan nga ba nakatira?
Nakatira ako sa Santa Cruz, pero walang masyadong magandang pwedeng tignan doon.
Baka naman merong isa.
May alam ka ba?
Siyempre, ikaw.
Pero nandito ako.
Hindi naman ako pupunta hanggat wala ka dun.
Pupunta ka talaga? Nakatira kami sa Calle Luz. Maliit lang siya ng kalsada na puro puno.
Mahanap ko ba yun?
Basta wag mong sabihin Binibining del Valle.
Sige. Kapag pumunta ako doon, sasabihin ko na hanap ko ang bahay ng pinakamagandang babae sa Santa Cruz.
Niloloko mo lang ata ako eh.
Hindi naman.
Ganon. Binabawi mo na ang sinabi mo na ako'y maganda.
Ikaw yata ang nagloloko sa akin.
The two laughed at their jokes and then silence until
Bakit mo pala nasabi na ito ang huling beses natin magkikita?
Pinapauwi na kasi ako ng aking mga magulang.
Kailan?
Bukas na. Gusto nila akong makasama tuwing Semana Santa. Kaya ito na ang huling beses natin na magkakasama.
Paano naman pwede akong dumalaw para magpaalam?
Hindi na kailangan. At naubusan rin naman tayo ng oras.
the silence fell upon them once more, but stronger than the last. They talked briefly about old things and mistakes, their hands touching for a few moments here and there. Don Julian summoned them while their hands gripped tighter than ever. Alas, Julia looked away from Alfredo and said, in a very quiet voice,
Paalam.
Alfredo shortly arrived at the church. Talking came the devout with their long wax candles, young women in vivid apparel, for this was Holy Thursday, and the Lord was still alive. Older women in sober black skirts. Came two young men in robes, elbowing each other under the talisay tree near the church door. At the corner of his eye, Alfredo saw Esperanza and her mother pacing behind Our Lady of Sorrows. Esperanza suddenly stiffened and pretended not to notice Alfredo catching a glimpse of her. Suddenly, Alfredo's slow blood began to beat violently, irregularly. A girl was coming down the line, a girl that was striking and vividly alive, the woman that could cause violent commotion in his heart, yet had no place in the complete ordering of his life, Julia. After the procession ended, he quickly caught up with the girl.
Magandang gabi. Nag-aalala ako. Akala ko nakauwi ka na.
Hindi pa. Naghahanda pa ang aking kapatid at si Senyor Del Valle, Ginoong Salazar. Ayaw nga pala,
Para saan?
kitang batiin.
Para saan?
Sa iyong kasal,
Some explanation was due her, surely, yet what could he say that would not offend?
dapat pala mas maaga kitang binati. Pero alam mo naman, mabagal dumating ang balita sa mga taong katulad ko, Ginoong Salazar.
He listened not so much to what she said as to the nuances in her voice. He heard nothing to enlighten him, except that she had reverted to the formal tones of early acquaintance. That warmth of hers was gone.
Interesado ka ba sa mga kasal?
Kapag kasal ng mga kaibigan ko, oo.
Ako, iimbitahan kita?
Kailan?
Sa Mayo.
Sinasabi nila, ang Mayo ay buwan ng kasiyahan.
Pero gusto mo bang pumunta?
Sigurado ka ba sa desisyon mo?
Oo.
Sige, pupunta ako para sa'yo.
They walked the whole way home in silence. As they approached the house, they were swept over the spirit of Alfredo Salazar, a longing so keen that it was pain, a wish that that house were his, that all the bewilderments of the present were not, and that this woman by his side were his long-wedded wife, returning with him to the peace of home.
Lolita, nagkaroon ka na ba ng pagkakataong pumiling gawin ang gusto ninyong puso? O hindi, dahil ikaw ay may obligasyon?
Hindi pa.
Inakala ko lang kasi na baka may karanasan ka. Para maintindihan mo ang isang lalaki na sa sitwasyong ganito.
Sigurado ba, ang lalaking ito ay, ang kailangan niya dapat gawin?
Di ko lang alam. Lolita, baka hindi. Sa puntong ito, di na yata depende sa lalaki.
Julia grew frustrated with him, thinking that this is his problem to solve, not hers.
Nasa bahay na tayo. Paalam na, Ginoong Salazar.
Without lifting her eyes, she quickly turned and walked away. Had the final word been said, he wondered. It had. Yet a feeble flutter of hope trembled in his mind, though set against the hope were 3 years of engagement, a very near wedding, a perfect understanding between the parents, his own conscience, and Esperanza herself. Esperanza waiting, Esperanza no longer young, Esperanza the efficient, the literal-minded, the intensely inquisitive. He found Esperanza talking to Callista, their note-carrier, who apparently did something about an affair. He chimed in, saying,
Oh, ano naman?
he sounded ruder than intended.
Hindi niya asawa, Alfredo. Dapat nag-isip muna siya bago niya gawin yon.
Sigurado ka sa kasamaan niya.
Sinusuportahan mo ang ginagawa niya?
Hindi, sinasabi ko lang na hindi naman ganoon kasama ang kanyang ginagawa.
O, hindi mo ba namalayan kung gaano ka-immoral ang sinasabi mo? Hindi ko alam ang ganyan ka pala mag-isip.
Anong sinasabi mo? Binanggit ko lang na baka sobrang iyong reaksyon sa pagkakamali niya. Kung may pagkakamali siya.
Pinalaki ni Mama si Callista, tapos ito ang gagawin niya? Gusto mo ba magkaroon ng anak na hindi matapat?
Ang problema sa'yo kasi, Esperanza.
Bakit ba ikaw ang nagagalit sa akin? Hindi kita maintindihan. Alam ko na yata kung bakit napakalamig mo sa akin. Hindi ako bulag o bingi. Nalalaman ko ang kailangan kong malaman. Aminin mo na kaya.
Alfredo was suffering, as he could not remember ever having suffered before. What people will say, what will they not say? What don't they say? when long engagements are broken almost on the eve of wedding.
Tama ka, Esperanza. Sinusubukan natin maging makatarungan at matapat sa mga mahal natin. Pero minsan ito mahirap.
Ano ang nais mong sabihin? Alamin mo ito, Alfredo. Kung ano man ang pagkakamali ko o pagkukulang ko, hindi ako makakahanap o hindi ako maghahanap ng ibang lalaki para lang mapasaya ang sarili ko.
Esperanza,
Kung gusto mong bumawi o bawiin ang iyong pangako dahil pagod ka na sa akin, bakit hindi mo na kaya sabihin sa akin?
She burst out in a storm of weeping that left him completely shamed and unnerved. The last word had been said. After a long, painful period of reconciliation, he had chosen to stay with Esperanza and went on with the wedding. 8 years later, as Alfredo Salazar leaned against the boat rail to watch the evening settling over the lake, he wondered if Esperanza would attribute any significance to this trip of his. He was not unhappy in his marriage. He felt no rebellion, only the calm of capitulation to what he recognized as irresistible forces of circumstance and of character. His life had simply ordered itself. No more struggles, no more stirring up of emotions that got a man nowhere. Lights were springing into life on the shore. That was a town, a little up-tilted town nestling into the dark greenness of the groves, Santa Cruz. Not wanting to waste any time, he quickly finished up his business there and went to his true destination, the one that really mattered to him. How would life seem now if he had married Julia Salas? Had he meant anything to her? That unforgettable red and gold afternoon in early April haunted him with a sense of incompleteness, as restlessness as other unlaid ghosts. She had not married. Why? Faithfulness, he reflected, was not a conscious effort at regretful memory. A few questions here and there, and he finally found himself in Calialuz. Somehow or other, he had known that he would find her house because she would surely be sitting at the window, where else before bedtime on a moonlit night. The house was low, and the light in the sala behind her threw her head into unmistakable relief. He sensed, rather than saw her start a vivid surprise.
magandang gabi.
Oh, Alfredo, magandang gabi din sa iyo.
May inaasikaso ako at napapunta ako dito.
Gusto mo bang pumasok?
He considered. His vague plans had not included this, but Julia Salas had left the window, calling to her mother as she did so. After a while, someone came downstairs with a lighted candle to open the door. At last, he was shaking her hand. She had not changed much, a little less slender, not so eagerly alive. Yet something had gone. He missed it. Sitting opposite her, looking thoughtfully into her fine dark eyes, she asked him about the hometown, about this and that. In a sober, somewhat meditative tone, he conversed with increasing ease, though with a growing wonder that he should be there or at all. He could not take his eyes from her face. What had she lost? Or was the loss his? He felt an impersonal curiosity creeping into his gaze. The girl must have noticed, for her cheeks darkened in a blush. Gently, was it experimentally? He pressed her hand at parting, but his own felt undisturbed and emotionless. Did she still care? The answer to the question hardly interested him. So that was all over. Why had he obstinately clung to that dream? So, all these years since when? He had been seeing the light of dead stars, long extinguished, yet seemingly still in their appointed places in the heavens. An immense sadness as of loss invaded his spirit, a vast homesickness of some immutable refuge of the heart, far away where faded gardens bloom again, and where live on in unchanging freshness the dear dead loves of vanished youth. The end.